Rajneesh Kumar. I'm been this IT from almost like a 25 year. The MuleSoft I spent like almost like a 15, 16 year. I helped with a lot of customer. I let Diane to tell her experience, and then after that, Ajay.
Okay. I've been in integrations for a very long time, been in the IT industry for quite a long time as well, on top of that. But I found MuleSoft about 4 years ago and was really passionate about the strength that it had for integrations and the ability to unlock, systems that were siloed. And so I dove in. I redirected my career, dove into MuleSoft, and have not looked back since. Have totally enjoyed becoming fully certified as well as a MuleSoft instructor. And now I'm CEO of a training company, and we bring customized training to our, not only for Salesforce, because we do teach for Salesforce as MuleSoft certified instructors, but also in the private sector as well for individuals and companies. So glad to be here. I'm also a Meetup leader of healthcare and life sciences and Women Who Mule, and newly to Atlanta because Atlanta's in my backyard. So it's great to have you.
Welcome in our Meetup group.
Glad to be here. Really glad to be here. Yeah.
Yeah. Ajay? Ajay, you are speaking. Your sound is not coming. Okay. So let's move on. This is our topic today, government sector IT modernization by the MuleSoft. So I would like to welcome officially as our speaker, Karthik Gopalakrishna. He is a director in regional service sales in MuleSoft. I would like to let him speak himself and then start with this presentation from here. Karthik, up to you. So now you can share your screen and introduce yourself.
Perfect. Thank you all. Quick audio check. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect. And a quick video check. Can you confirm you're able to see my screen? Good. Good afternoon all. Good evening. Karthik Gopalakrishna. I live in the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area. No surprise given I'm in public sector. I've been with MuleSoft for almost 6 years at this point. I joined MuleSoft in December 2017 after we had gone public, but before we were acquired by Salesforce. So I get to tell the story of our acquisition, which has been mostly pleasant at this point. So, been in the IT industry for all through my career, coming up to about 25, 30 years at this point. I used to be a programmer before I moved into the business side of the house. In my current role, I run the Federal MuleSoft Professional Services here at MuleSoft. Essentially support all of our federal customers, including DoD and whatnot. We'll talk more about it. The main goal in today's conversation is to give you all a bird's eye view of what public sector is all about. What does it mean to do business for public sector? What do our customers look for? How is it similar and how is it different from commercial? Right? I mean, there are certain things that's very similar. There are a few things that are different. As you go through this, you will see the story kind of unwrap itself. Please stop me at any point, ask me questions, and let's keep the conversation going. You can always look me up on LinkedIn, hit me up with any questions, send an email to my work email address or via LinkedIn for any further conversations. But very excited to be here, and thank you, Rajneesh and Diane, for letting me come and talk to you. I've been working with Rajneesh for several years at this point. He's been a great partner, and in the spirit of this partnership, I thank him for letting me come here. So with this, Rajneesh, if it's okay with you, I'll get started.
Yeah, sure. Thanks.
So this is the agenda here. Again, not to go over bullet by bullet. The idea here is to give you a bird's eye view of what public sector is, what's important for our public sector customers, what do they demand as customers. Customers tend to be demanding. Public sector customers are no different, right? What do they demand? What do we need to deliver for them? Those are the key things that we'll be talking about, and some of the product nuances as it pertains to public sector. That's what we'll be talking about today. Before we go any further, I want to give one story about how we impact, how being in MuleSoft public sector, how do we impact our customers and their end users, their stakeholders. So let's start with this video here.
Good afternoon. I'd like to introduce you to Nova, the adorable little girl with the infectious smile that you see pictured here. One day when she was a baby, Nova's mom noticed a strange glare in one of her eyes, and so she took her to the doctor. They did a bunch of tests, and it unfortunately revealed a scary diagnosis of retinoblastoma. This meant that she had small tumors in both of her eyes. Nova's pediatrician immediately referred her to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital in Memphis. Nova received life-saving treatment at St. Jude twice, first after her initial diagnosis, and again when her cancer returned 1 year later. It's devastating and unimaginable, but Nova is one of more than 16,000 kids in this country facing a cancer diagnosis each year, just a subset of the over 400,000 cases worldwide. Luckily, Nova is also among the 8,600 patients seen annually at St. Jude, one of the world's premier pediatric cancer research and treatment centers. Many of the cutting-edge treatments are clinical trials or considered experimental, so they're not covered by insurance. But one of the most amazing and unique aspects of St. Jude is that these patients and their families never get a bill for any of the treatment or expenses. Now, St. Jude's ability to deliver on its goal of finding cures and saving children for all families, whether or not they're able to pay, comes with a hefty price tag. It costs about $1.4 billion to run St. Jude each year, and given the rising costs of healthcare, this number is expected to grow to nearly $2 billion over the next 5 years. ALSAC is the fundraising and awareness arm of St. Jude's. And ALSAC is responsible for raising money from 11 million active donors to cover 80% of St. Jude's expenses each year through a variety of events and programs. This includes roughly 30,000 in-person events, like the annual St. Jude Marathon and galas in multiple cities across the country. When COVID hit, in-person events, like most of the country, came to a screeching halt. And the overnight loss of physical events forced ALSAC to accelerate their plans to better attract and connect with donors virtually. Now, St. Jude has a pretty robust digital presence on the web and mobile and in social media, thanks to ALSAC and the work that they've done. But when virtual became the only way to engage with donors, it was even more important to meet them where they are, to tell the stories of the kids that they are helping, and to make it super easy to give. Being effective in these efforts was no small feat, given the complexity, number of systems, and all of the data required to do this virtually and at scale. ALSAC partnered with MuleSoft to help unlock, bring together, manage, and process data from a variety of sources. This allowed the ALSAC team to really reimagine the donor experience and make meaningful virtual connections. It provided better visibility and insight into donor activity, whether they were engaging with content on TikTok or purchasing from the online store. It enabled tracking campaigns and volunteer programs and helped identify gaps or areas to optimize. It made it possible to launch new donor-targeted efforts quickly, whether it was a seasonal or a holiday-focused campaign. And above all, it kept all of the sensitive donation information secure, including payment and other personal details. ALSAC raised a record-breaking $2 billion in 2021, thanks in part to this and other technology investments that made it possible to pivot when the stakes were high, so that St. Jude can continue its life-saving work in the fight against pediatric cancer and turn more kids into survivors like Nova. Thank you.
Karthik, you are in mute.
Thank you all. I hope the audio and video was clear. I hope you got to see this real life story. See, this is what working for PubSec makes it exciting. Yes, there is good technology, as technologists, and I'm a former technologist, right, before I wore the sales hat. It keeps us exciting. We work on some of the cutting edge, bleeding edge stuff. Yes, there is money there. There is those things are there. Those are stakes that's important for us. But also there is an intangible there, which is the impact that we are able to make to the general public, the impact that we are able to make to the larger neighborhood that we all live in, what we call as a neighborhood. I was here during the COVID time. Some of the use cases that we did, for instance, we rolled out the entire vaccine management for the city of New York when it was considered the ground zero for the COVID epidemic. It was several nights and days. Political appointees used to call and scream at us, but you know what? It was worth it. That's what keeps it exciting, and that's the message. If there is one message I want you all to take over, whoever is new to public sector, it is this: that we have an impact that's much wider than what I would have ever expected before I joined public sector. And I've been in this industry for so long, it still keeps me excited. So, continuing the conversation, what is MuleSoft public sector? What constitutes MuleSoft public sector? All the federal agencies. Think of any federal agency that you can think of: Department of Commerce, Department of Transportation, the Department of Defense, anybody that you think of, right? They're part of the federal MuleSoft public sector portfolio, if you will. The state and local governments, all the 50 states, then the District of Columbia, and all the local governments, the counties and whatnot, they all form part of the MuleSoft public sector portfolio. Then the non-profit organizations. The story that we just heard is a non-profit organization that again is part of the MuleSoft ecosystem. And then the higher education, Columbia University, University of Massachusetts, University of Washington, all the way on the West Coast, the entire University of California system, they're all part of our portfolio. Folks, I am recovering from a viral. I was told it's not COVID. So if you see me coughing or if you see me going on mute, it's because I'm coughing. My apologies for that in advance. But again, coming back to this at a nutshell is what MuleSoft public sector is and what our ecosystem consists of. When you think about our customer base, who constitutes MuleSoft public sector, it's these four legs, if you will: the federal agencies, the state and local government, non-profit organization, and the higher education. So what makes public sector unique? I get asked this question all the time. Hey, I've been supporting Fortune 500 companies. How different is public sector, or are they not the same? The answer is a typical consultant answer, which I'm sure everybody on this call is going to appreciate. It's a little bit of an S and a little bit of a no. And you will see where it becomes unique. Yes is quite obvious. Demanding customers, they need value. That's a 5-letter word that we all live out of, right? Those of us who are in the business of supporting our customers, value is key. So those things are very important. It's a little different in few other things, and you'll see that in a moment. The procurement process. Doing business with the federal government or the state and local governments is an art as much as it's a science. Now, there are too many steps, too many bureaucracies, all for the right reason. End of the day, if you think about it, it's our tax dollars that's at work, right? So we want our tax dollars to be used judiciously, to be used for the right reason, and the procurement processes are there to ensure those guardrails are put in place. And that's where the public sector becomes unique. The procurement processes are quite stringent. You need to live through that for you to appreciate it. In my local language, I come from India. In my local language, there is a saying: sometimes even if the God rewards you something, the priest may not give it to you. That's exactly how it is. You have the business users come to you and say, hey, you know what? I want your product. I want your services. But then the procurement people will come and say, not so fast. Let's make sure that you go through this entire process. And that adds wrinkles and complexities and delays into the deal. This is a life that we all live. There is way to address it. I mean, a lot of companies and individuals are successful. It's just that you need to be aware of it as you go through that. strict regulatory compliance. The programmatic requirements, the technical requirements are quite strict. Again, no surprise, right? IRS is one of our customers. The Federal Reserve Bank is one of our customers. Think about it. Each of these people, the entire health and human service, the kind of data that they keep, and think of all the local governments and the data that they keep. This data is extremely, extremely important. It's valuable. This is PII data, personal identifiable information. So obviously there are a lot of guardrails put around it on how the data needs to be safeguarded, how there should not be any compromise either to the system or to the data. End of the day, it's our data, right? So obviously that's the second thing. So coming out of this is risk management. One thing is those of us who lived through the Affordable Care Act and what happened when the solution originally rolled out and all of the challenges that the agency faced back there will be able to appreciate it. Nobody wants to make the front page of a Washington Post or a Wall Street Journal or a New York Times for the wrong reasons. I would rather not have my name there than have my name for a wrong reason. That is the guiding philosophy behind each of the public sector buyer. They're extremely risk averse. Again, when you put yourself in their shoes, it's very evident why they are like that. Because this is important high stake operations and they need to be very careful. So when they put something out there in production, many a times it touches places that we can't even fathom on a regular day-to-day life, and they need to be extremely careful about it. And coming out of all of those things, the decision cycles and criteria are extremely, extremely stringent, time-consuming, sometimes complex. Again, goes back to the earlier comment I made. Our taxologists are at work. They want to make sure that the right decisions are being made. So that adds a layer of complexity. That adds a layer of. It can be cumbersome if you know. But coming out of all of these things, some of the contract sizes and scopes are unimaginable. I mean, it's very humbling to see some of the work that we are doing for our customers. The size and scope of what we're doing, the kind of data that we are handling, the kind of mission programs that we are supporting. The success is not overnight. I don't want to make it look like it's all overnight success. No, it takes years and years to do that. But when you do that, it's very fulfilling. It's very humbling, candidly. You know, the kind of systems that you touch, the kind of technology challenges that you face, it's extremely good. And of course, what are some of the outside forces that impact? What's happening currently with our friends in Capitol Hill? Doesn't matter which side of the aisle you sit in, the left side or the right side. I mean, everybody has an opinion. There is no shortage for opinion. Coming out of opinion is the politicians, and it's as polarized as you can imagine it to be, and that has an impact on our business, on our budget cycle. So these are some of the nuances, and think how some of these are similar to a Fortune 500 company or a Fortune 100 company, how they are different. If you're working in oil and gas, the international price of oil, what happens in, let's say, Middle East, is going to have an impact on the business that you're doing here in the Texas area. I supported oil and gas in my past life. What happens in London with the banking sector impacts your ability to do business with the bank. So there are these outside forces. Public sector is very similar from that regard. It's just that what impacts is changing a little bit. So early on, I said the 5-letter word that we all live and breathe in our day-to-day life is value. End of the day, this is no different from any business we all do in our own life, right? The car that I buy, the house that we live in, we are looking for value. And whatever that value is, there are some tangibles, some intangibles, some perception, some personal bias that goes into it. These are all things that we all go through that. I remember the first car we bought after we had our kid, or when we were expecting our first kid. The first thing we wanted to look was a car that offers safety to my wife and my kid when they drive. That was the first thing that came to my mind, and for sure my wife thought about the same thing. That's exactly how a buyer on the other side is looking at. Hey, do no harm, and then look at what benefit that you can do for this. So you need to be able to articulate it. This is the key message that we need to take to all of our customers, whether they're in public sector or in commercial. But the value here is a little different. These customers are not swayed by their stock price. That's one key difference between public sector and a lot of the Fortune 500 companies. They're not swayed by an activist investor, but they're swayed by a lot of other things. They're swayed by perceptions, They're swayed by what happens in the political climate. They're swayed by what happens with the budget cycle. And coming out of all of those things is the value for them. They all face the same challenges that any commercial customer faces. Their data is extremely siloed. If you think a commercial enterprise has legacy system, you can only imagine how serious that issue is with a lot of our public sector customers. They started digitization or whatever was called back in the day from the 1950s. So they still have systems that work on mainframe. They still have programs that run on COBOL. These are all the things that we choose to forget, right? But not in public sector. So there is that challenge there. Everyone, you talk to a public sector customer, the first thing they say is, I want my stakeholders to have the same experience when they come to my portal as they do when they go to an Expedia or an Amazon or pick your name, Airbnb, whatever it is, right? Whatever it is, whether it's their mobile app or whether it's their web browser app, they need to provide that. That is very important for them. That's what they're seeking for. That is, get me out of this silo data. Give me the data that's hidden behind 3 firewalls in a system that was built in the 1980s, where I don't have access, where I don't have a data schema. Find a way to get that data out of it, and then give me an experience that I can give to my stakeholders that's very relevant to them, that they're so used to when they go to their public life. That's what they're looking for. Legacy debt, total cost of ownership is very important for public sector customers. What I mean by that is, a minute ago I said how the public sector customers are not swayed by the stock market. But sure enough, they do look at the dollars and cents. Sometimes people have a perception that public sector customers are not worried about dollars. No, they're absolutely worried about dollars and cents. It's just that the way they look at it is different. They want to look at the total cost of ownership. And ladies and gentlemen, this is very important when we go in there as technocrats and when we are articulating value to our customer. Not only should you be looking at what's the cost of the product or the services, what does it take to operationalize it? What does it mean when they expand the platform as it pertains to MuleSoft and they bring in additional programs into it? Constantly, their fixed cost is going to come down. There will be more users, and there will be more value that they're going to get out of it. And how do they operationalize it? If you need to have that broader picture when you go talk to the public sector customers, so that they understand and appreciate what it is to run a platform like MuleSoft and what it is to derive the exact value out of it. I hope I'm making sense here. I know not many will be able to talk, but I'm going to pause here to see Rajneesh or Diane if you have any questions or any comments here.
No, it's going good. Dan, you have any question?
I don't have any questions. I just find it very enlightening. I've worked in the federal space in the past, and this is really a great point of view to bring out and the importance of it. So
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying this quite a bit.
Yeah.
Thank you. One thing that happens often is some of the things, obviously for obvious reasons, I have non-confidentiality with my customers. I cannot share some of the things that we are currently in place. Every time there is a new legislative policy, we are out there trying to implement. One example that I can give you is the infrastructure bill that was recently passed, where the government said that, we need to make sure that broadband connection is available to all the underserved communities. When these things happen, the agencies are under tremendous pressure. Think about it. In the Capitol Hill, the two sides of the faction are fighting very hard to pass this budget. Eventually, the budget passes. When the budget passes, the powers to be want the fruits of this budget to be seen immediately, and that's handed out to an agency. Now, all of a sudden, the agency has a hot ball of wax in their hand to ensure that whatever was that legislative rule that was approved is implemented, and the citizens are able to see the benefit. That's the only way the people who got elected, they are able to showcase to their citizens, to their constituency, what is it that they delivered. So this is one good example, is this last mile broadband connection. We are supporting them. President Biden made a decision to ensure that US can build its own semiconductor. So there is a CHIPS Act that got passed. We're again working on that. So these are some of the key things that drive the need for a customer. Legacy modernization, we already talked about it, the legacy data and everything. Silo data and everything, that's there. But this is another new thing. Every time there's a new legislative policy, obviously that has an impact to their systems, to their IT systems, and how the IT systems are being used. And everything else, if we talked about the legacy system, the debt and everything, that plays a role in implementing a new legislative rule. And that's where they need to come in very quickly and deliver solutions, and they come to us routinely. Then comes the modernization, which is kind of obvious. That's the reason I put it in the end. Everyone wants to modernize. I mean, whatever was built in early 2000s, now there's a legacy system. So you can only imagine how bad it is when something is built in 80s and 90s, or even before that, right? So these are some of the key things that our public sector customers look for when they come to us and when they seek our solution. Again, I hope I'm making sense here. I'm going to move forward, and eventually we'll have some time for questions and answers. So we said all of these things. We understood what the public sector customer needs. We understood how it is unique, what it means to deliver to them. So how does the MuleSoft product itself is accommodating the needs of the public sector? Let's take a step back here. Early on, I said that one of the key things for them is security compliance. Security and risk go hand in hand with public sector customers. No matter what you say, no matter how good your solution is, eventually it comes down to two questions. Cost is always there, but outside of cost, I'm talking about two questions. One is, how are you standing with the security? Are you putting any excessive risk on my program? These are the two questions that every customer asks. So what does that mean in terms of MuleSoft? What does it mean in terms of a solution? We have a unique offering. Probably you all know GovCloud. I'm going to talk about it. The cat is out of the bag, but that's where I'm headed towards. And GovCloud offering is exclusively set up for our federal customer, for our public sector customers to support their security posture and to ensure that the risk for them is managed. You see that I'm using the word managed risk. Risk can never be zero. If someone says the risk is zero, they're just lying or they don't know what they're talking about. You can only manage the risk. And your customers are very smart to understand that. So they want you to ensure that you're delivering them a solution where they can manage risk and where you comply with their security posture. That's what it means. What does this mean in the world of MuleSoft? At a very high level, the AnyPoint platform consists of 2 points, the control plane and the runtime plane. How these two interact, where they're located, is what is going to determine how the customer is going to look at your security posture. What I mean by this is the control plane and the runtime plane can sit in the commercial cloud, which is what, if any of you are only focusing on the commercial world, you'd be used to our cloud hub. That's where it stays. Is it secure? By God, it is secure. The entire world is using it. But the US government thinks it's not secure enough to put the government data there. They bring in their own people to assess our software as a service and give a stamp of approval. So what do we do for that? We essentially branch out of our commercial offering and put our code in a government approved cloud environment. It's running on AWS. And the government comes, does a third-party assessment and gives a FedRAMP approval. And that's what is our GovCloud offering. With the GovCloud offering, what happens is our management plane and our control plane both sit in a FedRAMP approved government cloud environment. It's running on AWS in the backend, but that is something that the government can accept. That at a very high level is what GovCloud is. From that point onwards, you obviously have different variations. You can put the control plane on the cloud, whether it's commercial cloud or the government cloud, and the runtime environments can be on the customer environment, what we call as hybrid. And then there is the fully on-prem version of it, and then there is of course the runtime fabric version of it. So taking a step back, this is very important. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on it. Most of the commercial customers are used to using our product on the commercial cloud. The Equivalent of that for public sector is our Gov Cloud, where both the control plane and the runtime plane sit on the Gov Cloud. For a variety of reasons, and I'll get into that in a moment, sometimes they want the runtime to be on-prem. Even the commercial customers sometimes ask for that. That is your hybrid offering. Even in Gov Cloud, we have a similar hybrid offering where the control plane sits in the government cloud, the runtime sits within the customer on-prem. The customer on-prem could be their own AWS enclave, right? So that is hybrid offering. So very similar to the commercial, except it's going to sit on Gov Cloud. And then the third one is the entire thing, both the control plane and the on-prem sit within the customer data center. So it's not a SaaS offering. It's not a SaaS offering. We are offering the solution on-prem to the customer. Some of our high secure customers, DoD, when some of the federal agencies, they use this on-prem because their data just cannot sit on the cloud at all. So they're very strict. Sometimes it's air-gapped. When I say air-gapped, essentially what it means is those systems are locked out of the world. There is no way to penetrate through any network connection into those systems. There's an air gap around those systems. And those systems run our on-prem offering, and where it's not a SaaS offering, but our solution is still available for all of those things. Again, folks, this is a very exciting thing. We are the only integration API solution out there that offers this breadth of deployment with this many number of options to meet every security posture that's needed. So it's kind of obvious why would someone go for Gov Cloud, because their security mandates it. Sometimes even with Gov Cloud, they don't want to send their payload onto the Gov Cloud. That's where they go with Gov Cloud with standalone runtimes running in the customer data center. That's the hybrid offering. And then a step further is where they don't want to put anything on any cloud, even if it's Gov Cloud. That's where the on-prem comes into play. I'm going to pause here to see if this answered or any questions. Rajneesh, I know you have the mic. Please go ahead and ask any questions.
Yeah. No, I'm just adding on the icing of your thing is, since I work with this Gov Cloud, I would say is this is a same kind of environment, but it's a little more compliance driven and as a security based environment is. So it's generally most of the government they use the FedRAMP Gov Cloud MuleSoft environment and is very secure. Is particularly built for the government project or PubSec model. Those kind of client they generally use it. So one question came, Karthik, is question asked by the Victor. Why Anypoint platform for PubSec Gov is quite behind the compared to regular Anypoint platform?
Yeah, good question. So, Victor, that's a good question, and therefore, for the benefit of others, there is a lag of feature parity between commercial cloud and Gov Cloud. So what happens is, I told you, right? The way you can put something in Gov Cloud is essentially, we already have something in Cloud Hub. You take that code base, you put it through a third-party assessment. They go through a very rigorous assessment process. They're going to poke holes in your code that doesn't comply with the FedRAMP regulations. Whatever be it, why is this port open? Why do you have this particular common port that's open? It could be anything, right? So you'll have to go make changes. There is a lot of back and forth that happens to harden the solution that it can run on a Gov Cloud. So it is a time-consuming process. So there is always a lag in the feature parity between what's available on commercial cloud versus what's available on Gov Cloud. Again, I'm not trivializing the effort it takes to roll out any solution as a GA, even on the commercial world. That itself is complex. We all have lived through that. It's just that the complexity goes up by several multiples when you put it on Gov Cloud because of the need for this third-party assessment and everything. And they take their own time to do that. These are third-party assessments. You need to have an agency willing to do that, and that's what adds time. I hope I'm clear.
Yeah, it's clear. Victor, you're okay. Just tap it. We can know, and then we can move forward. I think it's good. Let's move on.
So at a very high level, this is an important slide. When you look at it from a security posture, You start all the way from cloud app deployment to the private cloud edition. The way I explain it to my customers, it's a spectrum. One end of the needle is Cloud Hub, other end is private cloud edition. Again, I want to emphasize it's not like Cloud Hub is any less secure. It's just that the security compliance for public sector is not met in Cloud Hub. That's the key takeaway here, folks. And in between, you have all of the hybrid options. The key thing to note here is there is an issue of feature parity that we just talked about. Thank you, Victor, for asking that question. And the second thing is, as you get into hybrid solutions and whatnot, the customers need to manage the infrastructure on-prem also goes up. Think about a private cloud edition. You're essentially running the control plane and the runtime within the customer environment. There are several servers that the customer will have to manage 24/7, and they typically have one environment in the lower environment, like in your dev environment or something, one in QA, one in prod. So the customer will have to manage all of that infrastructure. I know the first time I met Rajneesh supported me for a customer who was running on PC. Rajneesh, I don't know if you remember it. This was back in 2019, but if you remember it, I know the joy that you went through. You woke up early in the morning to support the customer, right? So
Yeah.
those are some of the things that you'll have to consider as you talk to your customer about private cloud edition and whatnot. It's still a viable solution. It still is a good solution for someone who needs that security posture, but it comes with a price attached to that. And the price is not our product price. The price has to do with how they'll have to manage their own infrastructure. I just want you all to have that in the back of your mind. Now, GovCloud, when it is completely deployed on the GovCloud, it works just like Cloud Hub, except for the lack of feature parity that Victor just asked about. It works like a pure SaaS. A lot of our customers use it. They don't have any heavy lifting to do at that point. It is as less or as much as Cloud Hub is. I hope I'm clear about it. It's just that when you get into any of the hybrid, whether it's Cloud Hub hybrid or GovCloud hybrid or PC, that's where the infrastructure maintenance comes into play. Again, I hope this message is clear. So I told you the MuleSoft GovCloud resides on AWS. AWS has built a separate enclave, a separate infrastructure that complies with all of the federal government security compliance requirements. It's called AWS GovCloud. No surprise there. MuleSoft is running there. That's where we go there. We put our software, we go through a third-party assessment, and we come there. It's FedRAMP compliant. FedRAMP itself comes in two varieties, FedRAMP moderate and FedRAMP high. We are FedRAMP moderate compliant. Most of the federal agencies are able to do with FedRAMP moderate. And it supports some specific customer requirements like FIPS encryption. All of the runtime needs to have the FIPS encryption. It is supported by US citizens. That's another key requirement. Even when people are managing the GovCloud in the backend, which is transparent to a customer, it's managed by US citizens just to comply with the regulations and whatnot. And as I said, there is third-party auditing and whatnot to ensure that it continues to be in compliance. This is what GovCloud is at a high level. This is a key message that I want this group to take over as what is unique from a MuleSoft perspective when we are supporting the public sector. It's this GovCloud solution. What makes it key? It's the 140.-2 compliance. The security is embedded by default. Just by the sheer fact it's running on MuleSoft GovCloud, it means that your data has an extra layer of protection because of the security controls that come into play, and it's offered as part of the core offering, and it helps them do this. Now, what happens is, this is something important. You implement Mule solution in a customer environment, right? And you're using the GovCloud. It's already FedRAMP approved. In addition to it being FedRAMP approved, that specific agency, pick anybody. Let's pick Bureau of Land Management. That's the first name on this list, right? Bureau of Land Management, after you implement the solution, let's say you're integrating Salesforce with Workday. I'm just making it up at this point. They're going to come and do yet another assessment on your solution, not on the product, but on the solution that you have built to ensure that it meets the agency-specific requirements. Let me take a step back. When something is FedRAMP approved, when something is available on GovCloud, it meets all of the general security requirements of the federal government. Now, you take that, you implement it specific to Bureau of Land Management. They're going to come and do yet another security assessment. It's called Authority to Operate, ATO, Authority to Operate. And only when they bless it can you put the solution in production in that agency. So we have some 47 agencies that have provided us authority to operate. The only one in the industry with that many number of agencies that has given us the ATO. So what it means is not only are we FedRAMP approved, but we have also passed through the additional layer of security compliance test that the individual agencies require. And the last count that I had, we have 47 agencies or so that are doing this. If you go to FedRAMP Marketplace, you will find the latest list. This is just a snapshot of what it is. Again, I'm going to pause here. I don't know if anybody is asking any questions. I know I gave a little bit more detail about ATO and whatnot. I'm going to pause here to see if there are any questions on this.
No, you can move on. No question right now.
So as you go and implement solutions, I would imagine a lot of the people on this call, if not everyone, is a technical architect. They're in the front facing of implementing solutions, or they're leading teams that are implementing solutions. What are some of the key considerations that you need to do? Talk to the customer about what their security posture is. Understand what is it that they need. Do they need GovCloud? Do they need GovCloud with standalone mirror where the runtimes are on-prem? What is it that they need? Understand those things, because that's going to drive your deployment, and that in turn is going to drive the architecture of your solution. So please do that. I already talked about the ATO. Sometimes they ask for independent verification and validation. So your go live is pretty time consuming. Make sure that your customers understand it. And before that, make sure you as a technical expert, you're able to appreciate this process. Just because a solution is working in the lower environment, in the dev environment, it passed the QA and everything, you cannot promote it to the dev environment, to the prod environment. You got to go through this ATO process. ATO again is authority to operate. It is critical for each of the agencies, and this is done at an agency level. Even when you build a solution on GovCloud, even though it is FedRAMP approved, the agencies have their own specific requirements. They bring in their own security people to ensure that the solution meets their agency's specific security posture, and that's ATO. So just make sure you're thinking through this whole thing as you're building solutions for the government. On top of it, I know Diane comes from the HLS space, so things like HL7, HIPAA, those things are buzzword for people like Diane and Rajneesh. Those things are still applicable for the federal government, especially when you build solutions.
Yes, exactly. And each industry I have noticed has a unique set of criteria that they are looking to achieve. And that one of the things that I recall from being on a federal contract was that the federal level of, we were proposing that they were to change to GovCloud at that time. And finances were a big driving factor for them, just to be honest. And so that presented some challenges on their behalf, because they were that was a concern. But everything else was so secure, and having done a deep dive into all of the benefits of GovCloud, it would have been a perfect fit. But unfortunately, the finances were their reason they decided against.
Yeah, those things do play a role in it.
Yeah.
See, on top of it, right? Your network connection. There is this TIC connection. This is trusted internet connectivity. It's again a NIST standard. NIST is National Institute of Standards and Technology. They come up with their own policies on how the network connection needs to be. Every agency has its own posture. NIST has a couple, 3 versions on how the TIC connection should look like, and those things impact how we are connecting between the cloud and the customer environment. Let's say they have a data source sitting within their environment. Let's say they are using Workday, which is sitting in its own cloud. How do the network connections work? These are TIC connections. Again, these are problems that have solutions. It's been solved. It's just that when we go in there as technical experts, we need to think through this. That's the point here. And as I said, encryptions around FIPS 140-2, those things are important. If you're onboarding programs, let's think of a federal agency, right? Department of Commerce. Department of Commerce has a lot of sub-agencies. If the platform is running within one sub-agency A, and if you want to onboard a sub-agency B onto your platform, the two sub-agencies will have to have some kind of an MOU, memorandum of understanding. So those things are very important. Why is it important for us? Because for you, the ability to deliver value on time within budget, you need to take these things into consideration. If your program sponsor is not thinking about it, I want each one of you going there to go in as experts and bring up these things so they appreciate that you understand their business well, and you're also forcing them to think in ways which they may not be thinking. That's the reason why these things are important. Again, Diane, Rajneesh, I'm going to pause here for any questions, comments.
Right now, nothing. I just enable the question answer over here. If anybody want to ask question, just go ahead and ask.
So we talked about what makes PubSec unique. What is it that our customers demand? How does our platform support the unique needs of our PubSec? After all these things, there is a real life, right? We only have so many hours in a day, whatnot. We all have opportunities and options in front of us. Why would I want to work for PubSec customers? What is it that makes me attractive? I've been in this country for 23 years at this point, folks, and majority of the time I have supported PubSec customers. So why is it? It is the single largest buyer in the entire world. That's saying something. Just the US federal government alone is the single largest buyer. I'm not even including the state and local governments, the .org and the .edu. So there is a constant demand for good innovative solutions, for good solutions that is able to deliver value for what the customers are looking for. We already talked about it. So there is that aspect. It's a domain of domains. Diane kind of hit the nail on its head. She said about how every industry has its own specifications, right? You have HL7, you have HIPAA compliance, you have PCI compliance, the payment card industry compliance, so on and so forth. All of those things are still applicable to the federal government within the public sector. Think about public sector. It's a vertical of verticals, as one of my colleagues always says. You have finance, you have healthcare, you have commercial, you have every aspect that you see in the commercial world that are treated as different verticals within the broader PubSec domain. So if you want to build domain expertise, you can do this here. If you have domain expertise from an outside world, that's easily transferable here. So there is a lot of value here. There is a lot of need for expertise here where your value is recognized. And as I said early on, we saw that video, right? It provides you an opportunity to solve real life problems. I always think if my grandmom was alive and if she asked me what I was doing, I don't think she would appreciate anything about Anypoint platform, APIs, and the rambles and whatnot. I think she would be bored out of her mind. But if I were to tell her, hey, you know what? I rolled out a solution that made it easy for someone to withdraw money out of an ATM, which is what we are doing with the federal agency responsible for that. That would resonate well with that. If we were to go to our parents and said, hey, you know what? The vaccine rollout that happened and the entire world was struggling with pandemic, our solution played a role that has a value to it. So there is that satisfaction of doing something that's very tangible, something that resonates with the common man. And as I said, the scope and scale are extensive and it's truly humbling. It's truly humbling. From a purely commercial perspective, from the dollars and cents perspective, from a scope, the magnanimity of it, yes, it has its own problems. Catch me for a drink someday. We'll sit and have a scotch, and I can talk to you about a lot of the things that's hard with public sector. But these are the things that makes it worthwhile. This is what makes it exciting for us to be working with our public sector partners, with our customers, and delivering them solution. I hope again I'm making sense here. So I want to just show you a bunch of things. I'm not going to read through each one of them. So just this is a vignette of our several customers that's out there. We are helping our veterans. VA, no surprise there, is one of the largest customers for MuleSoft globally and for Salesforce globally. Rajneesh has supported our VA account. He knows about it. Healthcare, HHS, we have so many initiatives there that's helping reduce the fraud. That's helping us essentially make sure that the right healthcare is provided. And FDA is going through a lot of its own assessment for the equipment that's going to get rolled out into the market. They're using our solution to essentially accelerate the approval process. And these equipments are used to treat some of the most dangerous diseases like cancer and whatnot. So there is a lot of that happening there. Again, financial sector, we are being used in a lot of ways to ensure we are putting the right guardrails so that the right type of legislative processes are implemented to ensure that the financial system of this world is intact. Think about it. US by far is the largest economy in the world. The last thing you want to do is do anything that's going to impact the financial system of this country, because that's going to have an impact on the broader world. So that's what our solution is being used for. And similarly, right, they're using us to reduce the total cost of ownership. They're using us to help improve the national security. A lot of the DoD customers are using it. As I said, a lot of the legislative policies that are being used, that are being enacted, we are using our solution to implement solutions that's able to support those legislative policies even as they come out right of the Capitol Hill. So these are at a very high level, 50,000-foot level. If you were to come to me and say, hey, Karthik, what are the various solutions that you have developed? What is it that the customer is using for? Yes, it's all RAML files, it's all MuleSoft, it's all GovCloud, it's all PCE, the private cloud edition. But if you take a step back, folks, this is what we are doing to a customer. I think with that, last thing is it's just getting started. If you look at the broader PubSec ecosystem, we are just scratching the surface. There is so much of white space out there. I'm not saying that tomorrow I'm going to go and close a billion dollar deal. My bosses would like that. But obviously, we all know in the real world, it doesn't happen like that. It's going to take time. We need to nourish the customer. We need to deliver value. I keep coming to the word value because that's the most important thing. We need to do all of those things. But at the end of the day, there is so much more to be done. If we continue to do the right things, if we continue to do things the right way, I think we'll be able to deliver more value to our public sector customers. Rajneesh, Dan?
Yeah, thanks. It was awesome presentation. We caught a lot of information. Try to digest all those things since I work with this one. So it's a lot of information. So Dan, you want to say anything?
I know AJ had a question in the chat if there was any specific MuleSoft certification needed for developers who work in the PubSec. And coming from the instructor side, there really isn't one other than the standard, certifications as you go up through the career path. But I did have a question. We have a lot of accelerators. Are there any accelerators that are used in the PubSec as far as that's concerned, or
Yes.
recommended?
Yes. We have healthcare accelerators that we are using for PubSec customers. Also, the good thing is we are able to reuse a lot of the solution across the board. For instance, sorry guys, I have a cough drop in my mouth just so that I don't cough. So if you see me having anything in my mouth, it's a cough drop. So SAM.gov is a procurement portal that the government uses. Any of you can go and look at it. SAM, Uncle Sam, .gov. So SAM.gov is a procurement system. almost every financial system that the government uses will have to tie to the SAM.gov. So what we have done is, after we have built a solution to talk to the SAM.gov with one customer, we are reusing that solution. It's not truly an accelerator, Diane, like you would explain, but there is a lot of reusability in terms of it. Because of the siloed nature in how the federal agencies work, we cannot put a broader exchange, if you will, across the federal government and make them reuse. That's utopia, right? Hopefully someday we'll get there, but that takes time and effort. For all the good things that we talked about, it is still an extremely bureaucratic process. I don't want to sugarcoat it. So those things take time, but at least there is a good amount of reusability there. I hope I answered your questions.
Yes, the link for that was at sam.gov.
Yeah, I'll type it here, Sam.gov.
Yeah, one thing I would like to add over here is, if you are like going for the Fed or any of those state gov, you have to go through the compliance, some of the training that is mandatory for any of those federal FedRAMP or any government project, PubSec sector. So that's one of the things I saw like most of the time. Yeah, any has a question? Okay. I think.
Thank you, Rajneesh. Thank you, Diane.
Yeah, thanks, Karthik.
This was well worth use your time. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Yeah. So, Diane, you want to take it from here? Share your rest of the slide, and then you can speak.
Yes, that's fine. If you have the slides up still,
Okay.
if you want to go ahead and share it, and I'll talk through it. That'd be great.
Okay, sure. Oh. Stop sharing. I shared the wrong. Give me 1 minute. Yeah.
Okay, great. So what is next? You will receive a survey in your email regarding the event. So please let us know your thoughts, how you enjoyed the presentation, and for upcoming events as well. Yep, go back the other way. There you go. Let us know, for ideas of things you would like for us to cover. And Renish has covered a lot of things over the 10 years he's been Meetup leader of this group, and we'd like to get the momentum continuing going on as far as that's concerned with things that are of interest to you. So that's great. And next slide, please. All right, coming up November 15th is the World Tour, Salesforce World Tour Atlanta. And we will be at the Cobb Galleria Center in Atlanta from 9 to 5. It's a free event, action-packed full day of learning and experiencing and demos. And so we encourage you to be a part of that and come and join us there. I'll be there. I know, Ranjish, you were saying.
I will be there too. So it will be exciting.
Yeah, really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
For sure. Price is Right as well. And so that's it. We'll see you next time, and hope to see you at the World Tour Atlanta. So thank you all for coming.
Thanks, everyone.
Yes.
Thanks for joining. Thanks, Karthik, again. And thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Okay, stop the